Hey, thank you so much for clicking on the video. Before we get started, there is a major shift coming to the channel come the beginnings of May, but fret not, I will be very active and streaming regularly on Twitch. So if you have not created an account yet and followed me over on my Twitch channel, that is Dark Spider David for the username. So it's twitch.tv/DarkSpiderDavid. We're currently holding a goal of 50 followers, so if you can help out with that by checking out the channel, checking out past broadcasts that I've done, and seeing if you like what you see, hit the follow button. You won't regret it. See you then. Hey everyone, David here with a really quick movie review. It's not for the typical movie that you'll probably expect from this channel, I know, but I just thought I'd sit here and give you guys a quick, somewhat early look at my impressions or my feelings for the new Elton John biopic, Rocketman. I managed to get an early access screening for it through Fandango, managed to check it out. Normally these kind of things don't happen to me, but I'm going to seize this chance to kind of talk about it. So, Rocketman is a new biopic on, of course, rock legend, Hall of Famer. I believe he's a Hall of Famer. If not, I don't think I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing for him not to be, but I'm pretty certain that he is. Sir Elton John, originally born Reginald Dwight. Bet you didn't know that. There's so many other things that you may or may not have known about Elton John, and this movie's here to break it down for you, telling the years of him not only as a kid, which the movie doesn't really delve too much into, but primarily in his early years while he was trying to get songs written and get them out there, playing in small little bands and clubs as a background musician, only to then be propelled into stardom to the point where he's playing at Madison Square Gardens. But of course, all of the different trials and tribulations that come with being a rock legend, including some of the more sinister sides of the industry. And right now, while the iron is hot, it's really a perfect time to be releasing a bunch of biopics, because ever since the massive success of Bohemian Rhapsody, no matter how you feel about the movie, which I personally thought it was good, you know, it's that good movie that you say it's good, but you're kind of like, it's good, because walking out of Bohemian Rhapsody, I knew that it was the music that had me in a very euphoric state, only to finally mellow down and realize it wasn't a very well-written film. And to get it all these Oscar nominations, I was like, ugh, where exactly are we in the field of biopics? Since then, we did get a Netflix film on the Motley Crue band, and now we got Rocketman himself, Elton John, portrayed by Taron Egerton, which you've mostly probably know from the Kingsman movies, and now here, he's reuniting with Eddie the Eagle director Dexter Fletcher, who, and I know I'm getting a little trivial here, but he's actually the guy who managed to finish the production for Bohemian Rhapsody after the whole thing's kind of unfolding with Bryan Singer on the set. So he's kind of delved into that biopic pool before. So he's going full on Fletcher with Rocketman. And what you really need to know, and I think this has to be put at the beginning of the review first and foremost, is that Rocketman is more of a traditional musical than Bohemian Rhapsody really was. In fact, Bohemian Rhapsody was probably more so of a concert film, because whenever they played the music that you know and love from Queen in Bohemian Rhapsody, they would do it during concerts. Like, you would start hearing the music, and then they would either be playing it in a concert or they'll be playing it in the studio. And it's, for the most part, either a recreation of a live version of that song, or it's the full-on version, the version that you've always known of that song, just playing while you have visuals attached to them. With Rocketman, however, two things happen. First of all, Taron Egerton himself can actually sing, so he actually does his best to try to fill in those singing shoes of Elton John, being able to play the piano and also sing at the same time. Rami Malek wasn't exactly in that ballpark, so that's an edge up that Taron has. The other thing, though, is that Rocketman is more so in your traditional musical where characters break out in song. So if that's not your thing, you might preemptively end up tuning out from this film. So if musicals are not your thing, like recently with La La Land, where characters are going about their story arcs, the story is unfolding, the plot is thickening, and then all of a sudden, in the most unorthodox of places, they break out into song and they start singing to each other about their feelings about stuff. Rocketman is more in that traditional 1950s, 1960s sort of way of that, to the point where there's certain periods in the film that they try to tell the passage of time through montage, but it's done with a musical number that's very over the top and very whimsical and very fantastical. It kind of plays into the tagline of this movie, which is that it's based on a true fantasy, which lets you know ahead of time that there's very likely going to be several different things that are embellished for the sake of a drama. But again, it takes on the much more fantastical musical approach of characters breaking out into song, different from Bohemian Rhapsody. So if that's not your thing, Rocketman may not be for you. I'm kind of hit or miss with musicals. Most of the time, they just don't vibe with me, but I ended up loving the shit out of La La Land. And depending on the right material, you can really hook me. A musical all centered around Queen, which I believe there is a Broadway show on that would have been killer. Queen. I'm sorry about the pun. I'm not a huge Elton John fan. There's some songs of him that I absolutely love, like Rocketman, of course, and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and there's a couple of others. Crocodile Rock I really like. I really can tap my toe to that one. And then there's others that I like, but I'm not gonna, put it on repeat on my iPod, you know what I mean? Not to the same degree that I was with Queen. So when I walked out of this movie, I thought, I can't believe I'm saying this, Bohemian Rhapsody has the better music. For me personally, at a matter of taste, as a matter of preference, Rocketman is actually the way, way better movie. The narrative and the pacing is structured together and flows together much more succinctly than Bohemian Rhapsody was, where Bohemian Rhapsody would go through the template of a very generic band biopic where you're dealing with the drugs, you're dealing with the solo albums, that you have your main headliner wanting to go solo and wanting to not have to do with anybody and having it to live that cold, harsh, lonely life before finally hitting rock bottom. And then, of course, the usual kind of escapades that the artists in question would take of how they would come about hearing a certain melody or reading certain lyrics and being like, oh my god, it all came to me. This movie kind of skewers those lines of following your traditional biopic. I mean, it does deal with the drugs, it does deal with the promiscuous life of a rock star, but it also deals with some of the archetypal things of that particular character who's an asshole, that particular character who's trying to lead him down the dark path. But there's something, the way that it executes all these elements in a somewhat, not completely, but in a somewhat different way that feels a bit more endearing than it was in Bohemian Rhapsody. Like certain characters on the side you can tell are like the devil incarnate, that are like, you signed the contract, there's not like that. But you don't have your main character here, Elton John himself, be a total idiot. He's written in a way where, okay, whatever he is going through, that either has you feel completely sympathetic for him because of the things that he had to grow up with and the things they had to deal with as an adult now as Elton John, you feel sympathetic for him. And even though certain things are his to bear, his things like his drug addiction, his alcoholism, at one point even his bulimic status, all that stuff, on the one hand you want to say he went and seeked those things out, but on the other hand, you had so many external sources that made you go, oh, that's why you seek that stuff out. So you felt compelled for him. You felt bad for him. I almost wish I could kind of... Terry Edgerton was able to nail it to the point where I'm like, okay, if he does not get nominated for an Oscar, then I'm going to be pissed. I love Rami Malek. I love him in Mr. Robot. I can't wait for him to be the villain in Bond 25. But him as Freddie Mercury, he was exceptional, breathtaking on stage. When he's just normal Freddie Mercury, when he's just talking to people, he was okay. And I mainly blame it on the direction, whatever Bryan Singer was really going with that character. Taron Egerton is just consistent right across the ballpark, to where whatever he's got going on, whatever Elton John had going on in his personal life, you can kind of see it bleed onto a little bit on stage. And then a little bit of that stage persona also bleeds on back into his personal life, vice versa. And Taron was able to kind of balance that all to both of those things together. Like I said, we'll be really irritated if he's the one not to get nominated for an Oscar. That also kind of goes for some of the supporting cast too. Jamie Bell is great. Bryce Dallas Howard, never knew she could nail a British accent, but man, her power force of a mother, even if it's not in the most fondliest of lights, she herself, I could also see getting nominated for Best Supporting Actress. And by some chance, if you're one of those people that thought that Bohemian Rhapsody wasn't gay enough, just go and check out Rocketman, which in no way, shape, or form is obviously a bad thing, but let's just say that if you were complaining that Bohemian Rhapsody was kind of just tiptoeing around the more promiscuous stuff that was there from Freddie Mercury's life that made him such a very interesting and charismatic and compelling character, Rocketman has that completely in full space because it just brandishes its R rating. Which is funny because Dexter Fletcher, who again has some experience with the musical biopics, was able to kind of bring a little bit of that style you were kind of seeing at odds with itself in Bohemian Rhapsody with certain visuals and the certain ways it plays with wide angles and of course the musical numbers. But here, the choreography is great, the cinematography is great, and what I loved is that he was able to treat that R rating with some slightly form of taste. Like, it didn't feel like, oh, we gotta do R rating because Bohemian Rhapsody was PG-13, so we gotta shove that stuff in there. Because the first 45 minutes of this movie could easily pass for a PG-13 film. I was like, why is this R rated again? It almost doesn't feel like it needs to be. And little by little, it starts to kind of spoon feed you a little bit of just how far down Elton John really went down the rabbit hole back in the 70s and early 80s before he finally decided to become sober, and what exactly he had to go through when it came to the musical process of signing up with albums and doing all that stuff, which this movie doesn't center on too much, and it kind of lets you know ahead of time that creating the songs is not going to be its main focus, more so because it doesn't do it as artificial as Bohemian Rhapsody was doing it. You know, in Bohemian Rhapsody, you had your moments where they would hear something and they'll be like, oh, I like that. What is that? None of that really happens here. You have, it's very clear cut that you have one guy who's really good with lyrics, Bernie I can't pronounce his last name, but Bernie, played by Jamie Bell, and then Elton John, who would then write the melody, and he would just kind of like he would do what almost any artist would do. He would grab shit, throw it against the wall, and see if it worked. And going back to Fletcher's style, I like that playing on that fantasy angle, they would do certain things, especially within the musical numbers, that will kind of reinterpret how an artist really feels when he or she is playing a certain song or they're performing in front of a certain crowd or a certain venue, and they would illustrate that with visuals as forms of transitions to also forms of how to kind of like tell the story. So that was great. I do feel like a little bit of that style didn't help there was a little middle portion where I did feel like the movie dragged a little, which is funny considering that it's actually shorter than Bohemian Rhapsody. But there was a point in the middle where I did feel a little bit of a dragginess, and that was maybe because it was during a musical number that took what is normally a mid-tempo song and just kind of slowed it down to a slow tempo version of that song for this movie. So maybe that was kind of throwing me off. And then even though the visuals were doing a good way of kind of illustrating how an artist feels when they're playing music, especially during the Crocodile Rock scene where they're kind of like floating in the air, giving off that euphoric sense. I just wish that, since we're being so over the top with the visuals, let's be a bit more subtextual with the dialogue. And just like with Bohemian Rhapsody, there's certain scenes where characters say what they need to do in their character arc, and you're like, you don't have to do that. Good writing is when you don't have to write what a character is feeling. That's just lazy writing, and a little bit of that would kind of pop in here and there. But you know that you did a very excellent Elton John biopic right or plainly a biopic right period, when you make the film, you tell the story of this person that exists in real life, and now I genuinely want to investigate more about this person's life. Regardless of what kind of pre-existing interest I had for that person prior to the film, now I kind of want to investigate even more so, and also listen to their music. I never thought of myself I would actually type in Elton John into my Pandora list, and there I was driving on my way to work this morning, thinking to myself, I'm going to play me some Elton John, because the movie was still on my mind, but it wasn't so much because of the music like I was with Bohemian Rhapsody. It was more so because, again, I felt bad for this version of Elton John, played by Erdogan and directed rather well by Fletcher and brought about to the screen, that I was like, yeah, this is the way to do a musical biopic, and I am so glad that they were able to nail it in a way that makes this a film that I wouldn't mind rewatching again. I'm in no hurry to do so, but it's one that I definitely, come maybe Oscar time, I definitely want to see be put out there in the radar. So I'm going to be giving Rocketman a very, very high 8 out of 10. It would have been a 9 if it wasn't for a little bit of that pacing, and again, I really don't like it when certain characters have to say certain little, you know, like the lines that the phrases that you sometimes see on a motivational poster, and I'm like, people don't talk like that. So, and I know that this is not necessarily meant to be the most realistic of films, but sometimes the best films are the ones that let us kind of connect the dots for ourselves, regardless of how realistic they are or not. Still, you got great direction, great performances, headlined by Taron Egerton, and great cinematography made with a really nice compact package that I definitely recommend for you guys to check out if you're either a rock enthusiast, an Elton John fan, or very interested in checking out some more biopics that kind of divulge into someone's life that you always wanted to know about. Rocketman is it for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of the movie, if you have managed to catch it on the Fandango Early Access, or if not, are you going to be seeing it when it does fully release on the 31st? Make sure you like and share this video. Hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, and also on Twitch. Links are in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next one.